Hi there, it's Linda here from Just for Tummies, and welcome to today's video interview. Today, my guest is Jane Pangborn. Some of you may know her, some of you may have watched my previous video interview with Jane 18 months or so ago, or you may have seen Jane on social media. Jane is a HRT and menopause expert, amongst other things. So let's get Jane into the interview and we can ask her a few questions about HRT, menopause, and other things. There, Jane. Hi, Jane.
Hello, can you hear
Hello.
me? Oh, I can't hear you, Linda. Oh, hang
Oh,
on.
I can hear you. I can hear you, darling.
I've got you. User error.
Hello, Jane. Thank you for taking the time today out of your busy schedule to talk to us.
You're super welcome. Thanks for asking me. Lovely to see you.
Yes, it's lovely to see you. Was it around 18 months ago when we did our first video, Jane?
I think it was. I found it in some reminder the other day, actually. So yes, it was. I can't remember anything I said, but I doubt it's changed much.
Well, it certainly wasn't last year, so it must have been the year
No,
before. It must have been 2023.
I think so.
So I've got quite a few questions I want to ask you, including more information about you being a published author.
I know, right? How funny is that?
How did that happen? Anyway, on to that later. So, what I'd like you to do, first of all, Jane, if you don't mind, is just tell our viewers and listeners who you are. Who is Jane Pangborn?
Thanks, Linda. So yes, I'm Jane Pangborn and I'm the founder of Menopausal Not Mad. Founded, I think it was 2017. I can't remember the exact month, but I think it was around about that time. And I also run a private subscription, newly renamed the Female Health Forum. And I basically simplify HRT, hormones and female health for everybody that is prepared to listen to me.
And you just cut through all the BS, don't you, Jane?
I do try to. I probably offend quite a few people with my approach, but I just kind of get down to the nitty-gritty straight away. I'm a complete oversharer, as you know, Linda. So,
Yes.
I'm happy to share my own experiences. I'll talk about anything as long as it makes it sort of normalizes it for people, makes it feel more normal. A bit like you with what you do. There's just no shame in what's going on with our bodies.
No, that's right. By the way, we have included the new link in the. Yes, everyone, we'll be sending out this video in a newsletter sometime this month. I don't know exactly when.
Thank
And
you.
there'll be all the links in there to connect with Jane on social media, and there'll also be information about your private group, Jane. Is that correct?
Yes, the private group's been going for, I think, about 18 months, actually. But I decided to give it a little lick of paint this month. And so we've sort of refreshed a few things, and I've invested in an app for it so that people don't always have to be on social media because it's quite anxiety driving, as you know, for many people being on social media. And a lot of my members have struggled to access things on Facebook. Much as I love Facebook in many ways, it's not always easy for some people. So they have the option then of coming off social media if they want to. But yes, it's and I've also, this will be surprising to many, I've actually reduced, instead of increasing my price, I've reduced my fees by about 50% because I want to make it more accessible to women.
Okay. I remember your was it your menopause, or was it the HRT Truth Collective? Correct me if I'm wrong, Jane. Your Facebook group, and it just went absolutely nuts, didn't it?
It did, and actually, it's not my group anymore.
I know. I think
You know about that, don't you?
Yeah.
Yes. So one of my HRT educator students now runs it and does a really, really good job.
Yes.
But yes, it went from zero. I think it was 2020, August 2020, and went from zero to just under 40,000 now. It's plateaued out a little bit, but it's been really, really great because women have gone in there and they've asked some really heartfelt questions about HRT, and my aim was always to reassure and to just give people the facts, and then they can run away and do whatever they want with those facts. There's no pressure for people to go onto HRT, but essentially that's pretty much all we covered in that group. And I know that Nicola, who runs it now, is doing a fantastic job doing the same.
So you're concentrating now more on your private group, is that right?
I want to write another book, which I know we'll talk about later, but I'm really enjoying the writing aspect. I've always enjoyed writing. And I'm concentrating on my private group because I'm covering not just HRT, but female health, hence the name, because I haven't been using my experience in the nutrition world much, but I am a qualified nutritionist, and obviously I love my HRT. I know quite a lot about hormones for obvious reasons, and I want to focus a lot more on, this isn't a word I use very often, Linda, but the holistic approach. That's not something my community ever hear me say, but more about mindset and general female health. And I'm not an expert in all the things that I talk about, for example, exercise, but I see my job as making sure that I have all the facts and I can signpost people to the right places, including.
Well, exactly, Jane. I'm not an expert in all things. I mean, I have over 3 decades experience, but I quite happy to signpost people to other experts in their field, because as you say, it's all about helping women with their health and well-being, you know, as they move through the decades.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And people, I've said this to you before, but people often think it's a bit strange that you and I are bedfellows, for want of a better phrase, because obviously you're from a naturopathic side of things and I'm very HRT clinically minded, but actually we rub along really well together. And obviously you're always first in my mind when people ask about probiotics, prebiotics, and other supplements that you do. I use them myself, of course. So I just think it's over the years, I think it's become more and more apparent, much clearer, that we can't live in a little box and say, well, this is all I do. And I think for a time I did that, but I've realized I needed to expand my own knowledge and also the knowledge of my community, which again, as you say, you do too.
Oh, what's the name of your private group again, Jane?
I even said it wrong the other day because I'd forgotten the name of my private group, but it's called the Female Health Forum now.
Female Health Forum, yes, yeah. So, well, like I say, we're putting the links in the newsletter that goes out with this video anyway, sometime this month. Right, so let's get going then. So if you yes, I mean your book, I want you to tell us more about your book and why you wrote your book. So so shall we do that first? And your book is called I Choose Menopause, and I'm really interested to know why you chose that title, Jane.
I'm loving your little fancy graphics down there. I can't do anything like that on IT where things flash across the screen.
Now look. I am not technical at all, right? But I use this. Now we've got to be careful, Jane, not to digress, right?
Of course, yeah. Sorry.
No, it's all right. But I use this American software called StreamYard.
Yeah.
And it has to be really simple for me to use it, Jane, I tell you. And it says it's very user friendly, so I can use these fancy pop-ups.
I might try it. I have used it once, but not to do anything fancy. So anyway, so as you say, we digress. So so what inspired me to write the book? So I really love the written word.
I'm interested in the title. Why did you choose that particular title?
The I Choose Menopause. It did take me a long time. I had about 20 different names in my head, and I was working with a publisher, and I kept throwing these names at her, and I can't even remember half of them now. And I could tell immediately by the look on her face if it just didn't ring true for her, and she just kept pulling faces, and I went, oh my God, I just can't think of what to say. Anyway, as I didn't have a title till about halfway through the book, and then I honestly don't know why I thought of it, but I thought, what am I all about? What's the purpose of what I'm doing? What am I trying to tell people? And my ethos is that I personally view, based on my own experiences and evidence, menopause to be a really positive thing. And I often say to women, look, the alternative to menopause is death. So, let's say it's actually quite a good thing. So, in my humble opinion, I would choose menopause above anything else. And so that's where that came from, because it sort of summarizes my ethos.
Well, yeah, I tell you what it says to me. I mean, I'm well past menopause. I was 65 last week. I'm well past menopause.
Oh, you
But
look
to
amazing
me,
for 65.
thank you. But to me, that title says, I own my menopause.
Yeah, great.
Like you say, women go through the menopause, and that's a fact. They can't get away from that. So
No.
just own it and
Yeah.
do all you can to get through it as best you can. That's the way
Oh,
I
that's great.
would
And
interpret that title.
I think that's great. And I'd be super happy if every person picked up the book and felt like that. Obviously, everybody's going to view it in a different way. And I know I've had some really lovely reviews. I've had some private comments, and everybody's taken something slightly different from it, which has been brilliant, because obviously I view it as from my own perspective, because I wrote it. So I doubt very much if anybody else will view it the same as I did. But hopefully it's diverse enough and easy to read enough that people will gain something, from each chapter.
Okay, so can you give us an idea of how many chapters are there?
I think it's 15. I was going to say 11, but I think it's 15 now. Maybe 14.
And does
I
it
can't
kind
remember.
of
I should know, really, shouldn't I?
no, that's all right. And does it kind of start before menopause, or does it start at perimenopause? Where does it start?
It's as is my brain, Linda. It's a little mishmash of all sorts of things, and I wanted it to be a really easy to pick up book where each chapter was standalone. If you couldn't be bothered to read all the way through it, of course, it's not particularly long. But it's very much like, I hope, and I've been told it is, it's very much like just sitting, having a cup of tea, cup of coffee with me, and just to chat. And it's got my tone in it as if I was just talking about my life. So actually, I know this sounds tedious, but I promise you it's only a little bit. It actually starts with me being 2 years old and my experiences of life, because it's very much about life as well as menopause. I used to write a diary. I wrote a diary for 19 years, and I cover that a little bit as well, a little bit about how that helps with your mindset, etc. But so it starts when there's only one chapter on sort of setting the scene, really, and then I talk throughout the book about my experiences of life, hormones, mindset, nutrition, all of those things, but interspersed with facts, guidance, and supportive resources, so that people can actually can relate the two together. So it's certainly not a scientific journal, and it's also not a diary. It's like a little bit of a mix of the two. So it's quite light-hearted, and it's got my oversharing humor in it as well, which is either love it or hate it. Most people seem to like it, but I don't hold back, and I'll talk about, what it was like growing up and what it was like being perimenopausal, what it was like when HRT didn't work for me, and then HRT did work for me, and what brought me to where I am now, helping women.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you. So your earliest memory wasn't when you were 2 years of age, was it?
Yeah. That was
Really?
Yeah. I don't. It's not unusual. I don't. Is that unusual?
What's your earliest memory then?
So my earliest memory, we were brought up very early days in Argentina. My dad had a job in Argentina. So I can remember, I was only there till I was about 5.5. And I remember I was still in nappies. So I was less than 2. And I just remember playing playing in the pool with my brother. And I had a little friend that Mum used to take me over to see. And so just sort of general memories about, I think I was chased by a dog once, Mum said, when I was about 1.5, 2, things like that, it's trivial things.
That is amazing, because my earliest memory is my first day at school, which I think is for most people, isn't it? Because
I don't know why I remember it. Maybe it's just pictures I remember, but it's quite strong in my mind. And yeah.
Okay, so so you say that, and you write about it in the book, that initially HRT didn't help you, but then it did. So what do you mean by that? Because I know there are different types of HRT, Jane. So did you when you first went on HRT, then did you go and see your GP? Did your GP put you on HRT? It was the wrong HR. What happened?
Yeah, I think my story is reasonably similar to most of the ladies I work with. So I actually had I didn't know this at the time, but I had a premature perimenopause. So in other words, I was under 40. I was about 37, 38. Had no idea that's what was happening, of course. I was struggling with anxiety, and I've never had anxiety before. Low mood, not hot flushes, but low mood, anger for no reason other. I had a normal stressful life that we all have when we have young children, etc. But it was really odd, and my periods were all over the place. Cutting a very long story short, I did eventually go to the doctors. I think I was at 38, 39. And I was dismissed out of hand. No, you're too young, can't possibly be perimenopausal, which is quite common in my community, and quite common with women in general. So overall, I went to the doctors 3 or 4 times. Each time saw somebody different. Each time was dismissed. And a number of times I was told, well, even if you are, you're still having periods, so you can't have HRT. And HRT will give you breast cancer. So that none of that is true. So I got to the point where I was becoming frustrated. So I started to research a lot more, finally went back a little more armed to the doctor. They agreed to give me HRT. I didn't know a lot about HRT then. I just knew that that's what I wanted based on what I've read. And I was given, for me, it wasn't the right HRT. It's perfect for some women, but for me, it was a combined tablet that was just the wrong blend and the wrong dose for me. And I ended up having a period for 10 weeks on the trot without a break. And I was just falling apart at that stage.
You were worn out.
I was absolutely worn out. And I just thought, oh, this is ridiculous. But I didn't really want to give up. So I went back and I said, can you put me on something else? I was taken off HRT. There's a lot of back and forth. And it was quite a long time later, I finally saw somebody who was quite sensible in the surgery, and she prescribed me the Estrogel, which many of your community will have heard of, which is the body identical estrogen gel. So I went on that with the progesterone.
The bioidentical.
The body identical, yeah. Actually, I've got
body identical.
Yeah, body identical. If you just give me 1 second, I can show you what that looks like. Just bear with me. Should have come prepared. So it's this one, which is a gel.
And what does that mean, body identical?
So it means it's as closely matched to your own natural hormone as it can possibly be. It's actually made from the yam plant, this. So I know it's a medication as such, in the sense it comes from the doctor, but it's actually really, really safe and really matched because it's also taken into the body transdermally. It doesn't go through your whole system, so it's really, really a good option for many women. It's similar to a patch. A patch would do the same as this gel.
So how often do you have to apply that, and where do you apply it?
So this particular one, they're all a little bit different, and I'm dubious about telling you exactly where to apply it, because it can actually vary depending on where your best absorption is. But the standard approach would be to put this every day on the inside of your thighs. That's the guideline. Some people put it on their bottom or on their tummy, but it just depends which works best for you, because everybody's absorption is a little bit different. So I was putting this on every day, and then to protect the uterus, you have to have progesterone as well, because estrogen builds up the lining of your uterus, which is fine. That's what it's meant to do. But if it over thickens, as I'm sure you know, you are then susceptible to uterine cancer, which very sadly women in the 60s didn't know, weren't told, and they died of uterine cancer because progesterone wasn't part of the mix. So I was then taking Utrogestan, which is again a body identical. It's called micronized progesterone, little body identical tablet. At the time I was still having periods, so I was just taking this for half of the month. You don't need to take it every day when you're still having periods, and that worked really, really well for me. There's so much more I want to tell you about that, but honestly we'll go on for hours. But that was a really good blend, and in reality that is classed as the sort of gold standard HRT. But anybody watching this who is on patches, on tablets or spray or a different gel, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with your HRT. It just means that's a really good blend, and there are loads of other options which I'm happy to talk you through if you've got time.
Well, we might have to do that another time. That is so useful. Thank you so much. So just going back to your book for a moment, where can people buy it and how much is it, Jane?
Oh gosh, trying to remember now. So it's mainly on Amazon. So the paperback and the hardback are available on Amazon. I think I've got the hardback behind me here, only because it stands up better. Most people are buying the paperback, and Kindle is available as well on Amazon. And depending on it's worldwide, so Amazon of your geographical area. It's also available on Waterstones online, just in the hardback, as far as I'm aware. And if you're in the US, it's available online from Barnes and Noble, which is their version of Waterstones.
Yes.
So the just trying to remember, the Kindle is $9.99. The book, the paperback, is $11.99, and the hardback is $18.99.
Okay, great, thank you. So you mentioned earlier about wanting to write a second book. What about the menopause again?
No, well,
no.
Yes and no. Yes, obviously menopause is going to be in it because that's all I do. But I'd really like to cover in more detail. I'd like to cover nutrition in more detail. I'd like to cover the problems that people perceive with menopause and HRT in more detail, and a lot more about mindset, a bit more in depth. But I'd like to take a slightly different slant, make a slightly different slant on it. So less about me and more about the help they can get, help people can get if they have those issues, because it was very general. The book is great if you're just learning about menopause and you're just struggling with menopause challenges, but I want to sort of step it up a notch now and try and give a bit more detail to those who need it.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to what are the more common symptoms of menopause?
Okay, so I'm going to try and remember the list. There are usually sort of 40 or 50 symptoms will turn up on any list that you can find. They vary depending on where you're looking. The ones that tend to spring to mind for most people will be, obviously, hot flushes always come up, but actually not everybody gets hot flushes and night sweats. Low mood is quite prevalent, and there's a difference, as I know you'll know, Linda, the difference between low mood and depression, but either of those can come into play. Anger as well can come into play with that, and the poor sleep that comes with the fluctuating hormones can then, of course, cause the low mood and cause the anger, and so they all sort of overlap. Poor sleep can be aggravated further by the need to go to the toilet more often, so to get up in the night for a wee all the time, or even if you have, and back to your world, have an upset tummy. And I'm always on alert if women say they're getting up in the middle of the night for a poop, so I'm like, okay,
that's not normal.
No, that's not normal. And clearly they need to see the doctor. Sometimes if there's a lot of adrenaline going on and they wake up in the night, of course, that can be causing it. So it just requires a bit more thought. And I've been in that situation where I've had, I've been really anxious in the middle of the night if my hormones weren't balanced. I've been pacing around, maybe making a hot drink, and then it gets your gut moving, and then everything's moving. So all of this just pulls together to make life very difficult for the person concerned. So symptoms can range from really, really low mood to maybe just a bit of dry skin or your hair being a bit thinner, which I'm not suggesting that is a symptom not to be concerned about, because it is concerning. Women do worry when they're losing their hair, but there's often the psychological elements of menopausal symptoms can feel like they're having the biggest impact and stopping people being able to work. And we all know from things we've seen in the media that women give up work in huge droves when they just can't cope. with their symptoms, and it happens all the time. I can't remember the percentage at the moment, but there's a huge percentage of women that are still being forced to or feeling they have to give up work just because they can't cope with their symptoms, whichever one of those symptoms I've mentioned, plus the 40 odd others that are on the list. I'm happy to listen.
There's much more awareness now, though, isn't there, Jane? In the workplace, there's a lot of work being done by various organisations to to get menopause awareness in the workplace, but you say women are still being forced out of the workplace?
Yeah, it is a lot better than it was, but it's still a problem. There are a lot of companies that are now signing up for the pledge with the menopause mandate to support women more with their menopause symptoms and giving them time and support. But there are also a lot of employers who are not. And they're not being just as with maternity care, really. It's the same problem. You're always, I think, going to have employers who don't understand that we're not all robots. We all need to be treated with some care and attention. And I remember years ago when I was pregnant with my second child, I was fired for being pregnant, and that was in the 90s. But nothing happened about it. I complained, nothing happened about it. But that's that still goes on. It's just a bit more under the radar now.
I would have thought that was illegal now.
Well, it is illegal now. I don't think it was then, but I mean that was 1998, and yeah, I was in that situation. But it is challenging for women who are. They're not trying to get. Most women are not trying to get away with doing little and taking time off work for no reason. But they're being treated as if they're just wasting people's time. I know it's just a few hot flushes. Well, yeah, okay. For some women, it might be, but for a lot of women, it isn't. And as I said, we're all individuals. We just need to be treated like an individual. Like you would expect to be treated.
And if they're not getting support at home as well, if they've got a partner and they're not getting support.
Yeah, and relationships struggle a lot as well, of course, because it's hard for the partners and the family as well as the individual herself.
I'm just thinking of one of the symptoms, loss of libido, that can have a major impact on a relationship, can't it?
It really can, and it's difficult in a lot of cases to know whether it's perimenopause or menopause, or whether it's just the stresses of life, because women are complex beings, and it takes a whole raft of elements and factors to enhance a woman's libido. It isn't just hormones, and we're very psychologically based, as you know, when it comes to libido. But if we can get our hormones balanced and have some acceptance that we need that extra time or that extra care, then that goes a long way towards healing that relationship. And I'd only been with my husband and I been together about 25 years now, and we'd only been together a few years. It was early days for us when I became perimenopausal, and I remember thinking, well, is this it then? Because we went from the passions and the first flushes of love for the first few months to me going, not interested now, that's it. And I remember him saying to me, what is going on? Suddenly it was almost like overnight, I just completely
like a switch.
Yeah, it was, although it wasn't overnight, but it felt like it, I think. So I think we just need to be mindful and not be ashamed to talk about it. The whole libido conversation is growing, which is great, but we shouldn't be ashamed to talk about it. It's completely natural.
It is. It is. Okay, so let's look at the less common symptoms of menopause that women may not realize are connected to the hormones.
Well, I mentioned it earlier, actually. Things like dry skin and receding hair. So women often find they're getting sort of losing hair here. Sometimes they'll have more of an alopecia thing going on, it's where clumps of hair are coming out, which isn't quite the same. It's quite complex, obviously, hair loss. But if women are complaining their hair's getting thinner or it's going from this area, they often don't relate that to hormones, but that it can be. related to the reduce in estrogen levels, because when our estrogen levels reduce, we can become a bit more androgenic, for want of a better phrase. And so you might find that women often find that they get that extra tummy, that what you might consider to be a beer belly in the old days on a man, or this sort of hair loss that I refer to. And it's not that you're turning into a man, it's that your body's just trying desperately to attain some sort of balance, but your estrogen levels are all over the place, so it's not really sure what to do. That's not to say taking HRT is then going to make your hair magically grow into this beautiful bouffant, but it will help over a period of time to attain and retain some balance, so things calm down. It can take up to a year for your hair to recover, but
it must
yes,
be quite distressing, to begin to lose one's hair.
Yeah, no, it
Because,
really is.
hair is, I think it's quite a big part of our identity, our
Yeah.
hair.
It really is. I have one client, I haven't seen her for a little while now, but I've been seeing her on and off for a few years, and she's had a terrible time with hair loss. I mean, her hair, she has still got hair, but it's so thin now. And she's so anxious about it, and the anxiety then, of course, feeds the hair loss even more. And she's pretty balanced on her hormones now with her HRT, but there is still some hair loss. And I've suggested she stay away currently from testosterone, although I'm all for testosterone and I certainly use it. But in her case, because she's still losing a little bit of hair, I've said, let's just not do that, because I don't want to encourage more of an androgenic impact on your body. So it's a really fine line for some women, and yeah, it's really distressing. And I have a bit of a mop of hair, but it does fall out a lot, but luckily I've got a lot of it. But it's difficult. If it was falling out in a great degree, I think that would be quite upsetting.
Yeah, well, my hair's certainly got thinner over the years. My hair used to be much thicker.
It looks pretty thick. It looks lovely. It looks like a right hair.
Well, yeah, it's not bad, Jane, but it used to be much thicker than it is now.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, why should women consider taking HRT?
Okay, so it's a big long answer to that. I'll try and keep it short. So I'll talk a bit about the benefits. So the benefits of replacing our hormones, and I'm talking about a really nice, safe regime that I've just referred to earlier.
Yes.
There are loads of them, but the key ones that stick in my mind are that from a long-term health perspective, estrogen specifically helps lower the risk of bone degeneration, so osteoporosis, osteopenia. There are more and more studies that indicate that the lack of hormones in peri and postmenopause contribute to women being more susceptible to things like dementia, so and similar brain issues. So taking our HRT helps to reduce that risk. So it seems it's not actually it's not accepted in some circles, but many of the high profile doctors out there are studying and showing more and more evidence of such. One of the big killers of women, actually, one of the big problems women have is cardiovascular disease. So about 7 times more women will die from a cardiovascular event than from breast cancer. So it's actually the biggest killer of women. And it's been clearly proven now that estrogen is really protective in this area. Of course, we're all still at risk as we age, but it reduces the risk significantly of cardiovascular disease. Essentially, in simple terms, because estrogen has a vasodilation impact, obviously helps the blood get through the vessels, and it's very anti-inflammatory. So that's quite a key one, the cardiovascular element of it. But just from a day-to-day perspective, that improvement in quality of life for many women is is just irreplaceable. I
Mm.
certainly can't function without my estrogen. I don't take progesterone anymore because I had a hysterectomy a couple of
Mm.
years ago. But without my estrogen, I just can't function. And now that's not the same for everybody. Some women are absolutely fine and they feel fine without it. So from a quality of life perspective, they don't understand what I'm talking about. I get that.
When you say you can't function, what do you mean? Like fatigue, for example, brain fog?
Yeah, it's one of the things that happens if I don't have my proper dose of estrogen is I get headaches very quickly. I think that would probably wear off if I allowed it to, but I get quite severe headaches. But what I really struggle with is it's not really brain fog. It's like a crashing fatigue. And if anybody's watching this and you've ever been pregnant, that sort of crashing fatigue you get when you're first pregnant, where you just can't get yourself out of bed and your face won't wake up. I feel like that. I feel like I'm walking through treacle, and that's just ongoing. I can't shake that. I also find that my mood is quite low and I'm quite angry when I don't have my estrogen. I'm not really that angry a person, I'm a bit feisty, but I'm not an angry person as such. So that's quite difficult for me to manage. And also I find that my bones are quite sore. So those are my symptoms that are aggravating. The one thing that HRT hasn't solved for me, however, is I do get tinnitus since I was perimenopausal. I currently have a dysfunctional eustachian tube, which is nothing to do with hormones, but I've just kind of got used to that. Some women find that the tinnitus goes when they balance their hormones. For me, unfortunately, it didn't. But other than that, all my other symptoms are absolutely sorted. And for some women, the low mood is so much worse, and women can be severely depressed. And without that balance of hormones, they're much worse than I've explained in my own life. They really wouldn't be able to function, and possibly would consider doing harm to themselves through no fault of their own. But energy levels as well all come into that, and sleep, and all the things we've talked about. So the benefits, certainly with the women that I work with and in my own experience, are quite great. They're quite big. I can't imagine me not taking HRT. I never try and force somebody to take HRT. I just give them the information, tell them what I know, and hopefully reassure them, that they won't be putting themselves at risk if they do decide to take it.
And how long can women take HRT for?
Well, I think I've said this before. You will have to prize it from my dead hands, Linda. I will never let it go. But it's actually is a personal choice. You can take it for forever if you want to. I will be doing that, and I've said to my husband, if I go before him, could he make sure my patch is on when they pop me in my little coffin? But if you want to, you don't have to take HRT if you don't want to. If you want to, you can just take it for a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and then stop. The only thing I would say, sorry, go on.
You may be covering this in the next couple of seconds, but there is a time frame though when you need to start taking HRT.
Yes.
You can't start taking HRT when you're in your 60s or when
you can. No, you can, Linda.
You can.
So let me I've got quite a few clients actually who are a lot older. I tend to work with, I don't know why, I tend to have a lot of clients, work with lots of clients who are older. And I have one client who came to me when she was in her, I think she was 86 when I met her. She was in a terrible state. She was really struggling. And didn't know that this was an option. So we talked it through, and then she talked to her doctor, and we, back and forth a little bit. And she's about 89 now, and she's doing really well. She's still 89. It hasn't made her 26, and made her all youthful, but she's doing really well, and she feels well in herself. So the easiest way just to summarize it is there is a window of opportunity where it's ideal that you take your HRT if you're going to. That would be within the 10 years of being postmenopausal. So within those first 10 years after your periods have stopped is a really good opportunity. Preferably earlier when you're perimenopausal, if you're aware you're perimenopausal and you're struggling, particularly if you're under 40, as I was, and you have what they call premature ovarian insufficiency, so POI, because you're going to be postmenopausal for a lot longer than the rest of us if you're starting at an early age. And so there's a good chance that you're at a higher risk of more of the psychological distress and more of the bone degeneration, just as examples. So it's really good to get that foundation in place early. However, if you don't get the foundation in early, within 10 years of being postmenopausal would be ideal. However, if you haven't done that and you're coming to HRT later, although there are fewer benefits when you're older, because of course some degeneration has occurred, you're older, the risk factors increase anyway with our health, that doesn't necessarily then equate to there being a higher risk.
Okay.
You need to be sensible in the sense that you can't sort of go in with a 75-year-old and say, okay, let's get you on the highest dose of HRT, let's crack on with this. We need to be sensible. We don't want to shock the system because, of course, your body has got used to having none of these hormones. Therefore, if we suddenly pile a lot of new stuff into the body, as with anything, as you know, the body's going to go, well, hang on, that doesn't feel right. And there'll be side effects and potentially put that person at risk. So if somebody comes to me who's a lot older, who has been postmenopausal for a long time, I would say, look, if you're happy to go ahead with HRT, my recommendation would be that you start on a really low dose of estrogen and progesterone, the relevant progesterone dose. See how you go for 3-6 months. Just see how you feel. If you're improving on that dose and you feel fine, maybe you'll need an increase or maybe you'll just stay on that low dose. That's absolutely fine. But it's the phrase, I use this phrase a lot, but it's the slowly catchy monkey approach, which I use, by the way, with some of my American clients, and they go, what on earth does slowly catchy monkey mean? So that's a really good approach to take with anybody that's sort of out of that sort of 10-year window.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you. So let's have a look. What's next? So what are the contraindications for taking HRT?
Okay, so the contraindications are not as great and as long a list as you might think. So one relatively simple one to explain, which is, it's not really a contraindication, but it causes a challenge, is when women are progesterone intolerant. So a lot of women come to me and they say, oh, I can't take HRT because when I start taking the progesterone tablet or I'm on my progesterone weeks, I'm really anxious, I feel suicidal, I'm bloated, I feel terrible, I just, hormones don't agree with me. Now, I understand why they would feel like that. I understand why they would think hormones don't agree with them, but it's not that uncommon for a woman to have a bit of an intolerance to that progesterone or synthetic progestin element of the HRT. So I'll always say to her, look, let's just talk about what's happened at each stage of your HRT journey. Let's see if we can pick apart whether this is a progesterone intolerance. And there are actually lots of other options you can try. So it might be, for example, these ones that I showed you earlier, these little progesterone, body identical progesterone tablets, they're actually licensed for oral use. But a lot of women benefit, and they're perfectly safe to do this, benefit from taking them vaginally. So in my...
I thought you were going to say that, so they'd insert one vaginally then.
Yes, so pop it up instead of down, as I say in my no-nonsense way. So, and that removes that systemic impact most of the time. If somebody's really intolerant, and I mean somebody that's perhaps got PMDD or just has a real intolerance for another reason, there are other options. Some women, even though it's a synthetic progestin, some women find that the Mirena coil actually doesn't cause any issues. So that's an option. There are a couple of other brands which are normally used in IVF patients, one called Lutagest and one called Cyclogest, which are vaginal pessaries, same progesterone, still body identical. They're really good for a huge progesterone intolerance. In fact, I had a client, she was only young, she was only in her 30s, perimenopausal, really busy policewoman, really, really busy at work, and she struggled so much with her hormones, obviously perimenopausal, and whenever she took progesterone, she just couldn't function. She was suicidal. This went on and on for a while, back and forth, and finally she managed to get, I'd advised that she get her doctor to prescribe Lutagest for her, because I said it's much better for people in your situation, which she did. And I was so happy, because after all the time we'd spent together, she messaged me and she said, I've been taking the Lutagest vaginally for the last few days. No reaction at all. She said, I feel amazing. She said, I didn't feel any low mood. I didn't feel depressed. She said, it's like my whole world has opened up. And I was so happy for her, because that just completely changed her life, being able to take the HRT that she wanted to take, but do it without the concern and the worry about how she'd feel when she took certain parts.
That's interesting. So instead of it going through, the digestive system, taking it orally, we'll insert it vaginally, and then it's taken up by, well, I'm assuming the hemorrhoidal veins, and taken to the liver and distributed that way.
It's just absorbed essentially into the uterus. There isn't much that goes into the bloodstream, to be fair. It's some people do take it rectally. I don't recommend that, purely because I want it to go exactly where I know it's needed, which is straight up into the uterus.
Of course, they're inserting it into the vagina, not into. I'm just. It's because I'm doing day in, day out. I'm always talking about the rectum.
But some people do take it rectally. As I say, I don't recommend it, not because there's anything dangerous, other than it's not giving as much uterine protection as I would like. Obviously,
that makes sense, Jane. That makes perfect sense. Yes.
And it's more than doable to do that. But in terms of other contraindications, I know women will say, I've had breast cancer, therefore I can't take HRT. And my breast cancer was estrogen receptor positive. Now, there are more and more studies coming out. I don't have a reference point at the moment. I'm just trying to remember where I saw the latest study. It'll come to me. But that are evidencing that although, of course, it's a concern, many women will still decide to take HRT post breast cancer, because their quality of life is just too poor without it. And just because you've had a breast cancer doesn't then mean that adding in hormones is going to increase the chance of recurrence. Now, the studies seem to be indicating quite clearly that the introducing HRT post breast cancer does not increase the risk of a recurrence. Obviously, more studies are required, but that seems to be the indication. But even those women who are concerned about it, many of them will say, actually, I'm just going to take a low dose, because that just keeps me on a level. There's never any pressure to do that. And I would always suggest you try and get a good specialist on side. I know a couple of really good breast cancer specialist doctors who will prescribe HRT. They need to be monitoring you, of course, because nobody's 100% sure about anything. But the studies are really, really positive these days. And now that we don't work with horrible synthetic estrogens like Premarin, which you'll have heard of, made from horse's urine, which is not as safe.
Is that still available?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Really?
I know. It is. In fact, I had a client, I think it was last year, actually. She was in her 50s. She'd been on HRT a long time. She'd managed to have it for, I think it was about 20 years. And she'd been prescribed Premarin all those years ago. But, and I'd said, but you're not still on it, are you? And she said, oh, yeah, I've not really had a review. And I went, okay, so shall we start with changing that? Let's get you onto something safer, because there's no need for somebody to be on something that isn't safe now. There's so much good stuff out there from an HRT perspective. You don't need to be fobbed off with stuff that's going to increase your risk. And one example of that would be, although I have no real issue with the HRT tablets, the oral HRT, it's very good. And some women need it because they don't absorb the transdermal very well. in a lot of cases, doctors will prescribe, for example, these oral tablets because they don't really understand what else is available. It's just what pops up on the screen. But they're not aware that that increases the risk, only slightly, but increases the risk of a blood clot for a woman. So there's no need for her to take that risk. You know, I'm not saying that all women can use transdermal estrogen, but if you can, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you have that as an option? And you don't need to have that increased risk. So if you have high blood pressure, or you're overweight, or you have migraines with aura, they shouldn't really be giving you the tablets anyway, or certainly not without telling you the risks. So then that's actually one of the contraindications, which I'd forgotten to mention. So I've sort of overlapped with that.
Right, that's great. Thank you so much. So so can HRT be taken with supplements? What's your take on this?
You'll be pleased to know the answer is yes. Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I tend to say to people is I don't recommend HRT with the menopause type supplements generally. You know, the Menopace would be one example. I'm sure it's perfectly fine, Menopace, but not alongside HRT, purely because the soy and the ashwagandha and the red clover and all those things, which are fine if you're not taking HRT, they can help with symptoms. If you're bringing those in on top of HRT, they can mess with the balance a little bit. So it's quite difficult to get the balance if you've got lots of other things that can boost your estrogen in the mix as well. So I tend to stick with things like the things that you do anyway, Linda, things like omega-3, always top of my list.
With the live bacteria, the enzymes.
Live bacteria, probiotics, prebiotics. If somebody... if I think somebody needs it, vitamin D is always good. Magnesium's a great add-in, as you'll know. Those are my sort of standards. And then it just depends what other people want to do. So some women like to add in a collagen. No issue with that. But I'm not a fan of just having the supplements for the sake of it. They're just key ones, the ones that you know about and provide as well. Those are really all we need, unless there's something particular going on with your health that you need to be concerned.
Well, as you probably know, I have developed a new supplement, a Menopause Plus supplement.
Right.
It's a capsule, and we'll be launching it sometime this month. It's taken months to develop.
Perfect.
And it's got a lot of the important vitamins, minerals, trace elements that menopausal women need, and it's also got some botanicals in it, like ashwagandha, like sage, dong quai, Siberian ginseng. But on the label, we have put that you need, if you are taking any other medication, then you need to consult your GP because of what you've just said about the overlapping if they're already taking HRT. So really, our supplement, Jane, is for women who don't want to take HRT, or for whatever reason they can't take HRT.
Absolutely right. And actually, that's a really good point, because more and more people are coming into my community who wouldn't normally have crossed my path, who don't want to take HRT. And I'm saying, okay, well, then we need to look at other options. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be saying take HRT and a menopause supplement. They're probably going to choose between the two. But if they need that support, of course, take whatever you need. And sage is top notch, actually, because I used to take sage early days when I had really bad hot flushes, and I used to take. Yeah, and it was actually pretty good. It's good for to sort of calm things down and calm.
It took the edge off. It took the edge off.
Really did. It really did. I think that was one called, I don't know, Menoforce or something. I can't remember.
Menasan. I took Vogel's Menasan.
Yes, I remember that one. And so those are all great. It's just we need to be sensible, as you do with any supplements or meds, not to have that crossover. And I always think it's good to focus on one pathway as well. If you're trying to mix too much together, it can become so confusing. And I had one lady come to see me. She was, I asked her, one of the questions I asked is, are you taking any supplements? And she said, she listed this list. There were about 45 different supplements. And I said, I said, what are you taking? I said, why are you, do you know why you're taking them? She said,
Well, it's the reason why I developed Just for Tummies in the first place, as you probably know, because it's something that my husband, he kind of mentioned it one day. I said, don't be ridiculous. I'm working in clinic 6 days a week. But then I had this young girl come in who was she was a fitness coach, but she also did she entered professional bodybuilding competitions. She got a beautiful figure, but she suffered with bloating. So she came to me for colon hydrotherapy, actually. And when I was in clinical practice, I always used to say, bring whatever supplements you're taking, let's have a look at them. And she walked into the clinic with a hold-all, a sports holder that I thought contained her gym kit, when in actual fact it contained all the supplements that she was taking. So that's when I made the decision then, to develop a targeted range of supplements. Yes.
I think it's important that people have the choice as well, because certainly in the last 18 months to 2 years, I've noticed that as I've been talking more and more to the community, the menopause and HRT community, women are grateful for the HRT advice, which is fab, that they're prepared to listen to me on that score, but they are searching for more of a blend of advice. So, which is why I really like our relationship, Linda, because you and I we come at it from completely different angles, but we really respect each other's areas of specialism, and that's so useful for people to see that we don't have to be at loggerheads just because you're a naturopath and I do what I do. It doesn't have to be like that.
No, it doesn't have to be like that. I'm not like that, because like I said to you, it's all about helping, supporting women through the decades. I think with women contact Just for Tummies, Jen. I probably told you before, because when they start going through the menopause, they start to suffer. These are the 3 main digestive symptoms that they get: constipation, acid reflux, and bloating. So, we can help with the current range, we can help them with them. But then they started asking, well, can you help with the hot flushes, the night sweats, the anxiety, the sleeplessness, which is why I decided to develop Menopause Plus.
Nice. No, and it's good to, and it's really good to be responsive to the community. It's not easy developing something new, as I know, although I haven't developed any supplements, but it just you can't be everything to everybody, but to give people a choice when people are clearly needing that extra support without trying to push lots of different options on them. People just want, I find that people want me to go, okay, just do this. That's what you need to do. They don't really want lots of options. They just want, a couple of things to choose between, and then they're good. So I might say, look, these are your HRT options, off you go. Or I might say in the future, I might be saying to them, look, these are your HRT options. If you're not keen on HRT, you might want to consider Menopause Plus. And they've got a couple of things to look at and they can decide.
Yeah, I'm the same, with digestive health. I ask a few key questions. I want to know the antibiotic history. I want to know if they've ever had food poisoning or norovirus. I want to know what medications they're taking. I obviously want to know the symptoms. I want to know their age, because, I need to know if they are menopausal or not. And that's it. And then it's just, it's just 1 or 2, maybe 3 max supplements for a month, Jane, for a month. And then I ask people to come back to me and let's review, tell me how you've been feeling, tell me how your symptoms are, and we might need to tweak things. So
I think that's important as well, Linda, and that's one of the reasons I like having the private community, is because I'm just nosy at the end of the day, I think, but I really like to get stuck into people's lives a little bit and review them. So although it's not always an in-depth review, people chip in and out and say, oh, this happened, that happened, what should I do about this? And I love to be able to just give them a little nugget of information to just send them off to change something or tweak something.
I absolutely love it. And it's time consuming, isn't it? It's very time consuming, but you know, it's what gets me up in the morning, certainly
Yeah.
in terms of my work. Yes.
No, well, you're amazing at what you do because when both personally and professionally, I've messaged you and emailed you. I don't even know how many times over the years when I've either had a client challenge, gut challenge, or a personal gut challenge, or I'm just looking for information. And you know, you're a busy woman running a busy, successful business, and you never fail to respond to me. So I'm not suggesting, by the way, that everybody should email you and message you there. That's I wasn't inviting them to do that, but you show that you really do care about your community, which is important.
Absolutely. It's been a tough year, Jane. It's been a very tough year for
Yeah,
me, you know, for my
no,
family because of my mum's diagnosis, and she's in
yeah,
full-time residential care now,
yeah,
which has made things a little bit easier. I'm no longer getting the panic attacks and, you know, the
yeah.
anxiety attacks because I was afraid that she might have another accident at home.
Has she been
Uh,
well looked after now? And that's the main
yes, yes, she is. It's a lovely private care home.
thing.
She's being well looked after, which makes me feel a lot better. But you still can't help the feelings of guilt, Jane.
No, no.
And yes, I've got two grandchildren. I had another grandchild born 3 months ago. So
So
life is, and I want to spend as much time as I can with my grandchildren, being an older granny. And you know, I love my grandchildren more than
yeah.
life itself. Have you got any grandchildren yet?
No, no grandchildren. I don't feel old enough to have a grandchild, but I am old enough. But I mean, obviously, I'm old enough. But no, we've got between us, we've got 4 children, but they're kind of all 4 of them are sort of in career mode. So they all do
Ah,
completely different things, and they're all sort of building their careers. So the youngest is my boy. He's what is he? 26, and then the oldest is 31. So, but yeah, I'm not expecting grandchildren yet.
well, our son didn't become a father until he was 39.
Uh, well, we've got
So
time then.
plenty
Yeah,
of time.
plenty of time. Well, we're quite looking forward to it, but yeah, we're all right for now. I think we're busy enough. I don't know how you fit it all in, Linda. To be fair.
I know I don't sometimes. I've got a very good husband, a very
Oh,
supportive, a very supportive. In fact, next year we will have been together for 50 years. I can't believe I'm saying that
a long
because
time.
we met when I was 16 and he was 17.
Oh, that's so lovely.
I know.
Well, we're
Um,
on second marriage. Roger and I are, we're both divorced. We came together. We both had 2 children each. Didn't have any children between us, and so yes, it's not as many years, but yeah, it was yeah. I don't. It was the right decision. I don't think we would have liked each other if we'd met each other 50 years ago.
really?
I don't think I'd have got on with him, and I don't think he'd have got on with me. I was, I was just out there drinking and smoking and having a good time, and he was playing golf. So yeah.
Oh, okay then, Jen. I think we're going to
Right.
have to wind this up now.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much for your
you, Linda.
time. Everyone who's watching this, listening to this, I hope you enjoyed our chat with Jane Pangborn. And Jane, if you can just remind us again, people can buy your book, I Choose Menopause, on Amazon. It's also online at Waterstones, and if they're in America, it's
It's at
available from
Barnes and
Barnes and
Noble.
Noble.
But if they go onto my website, Menopause or Not Mad, there's a little thing about buying my book, so they'll be able to see
Menopausal
that.
Not Mad, right? So we need to direct people to Menopausal
Yeah,
Not Mad.
that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Linda.
So everyone, thank you so much for listening. As I said at the beginning, we will be sending this video out in a newsletter. If you receive our newsletters, if you don't sign up to receive our newsletters, and thank you for listening, and thank you, Jane, so much for sharing
Thanks
your
for having
knowledge
me.
and expertise with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, and goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, bye, everyone.